Hello, everybody. My name is Troy McIntosh, head of school at Worthington Christian School, and I want to thank you for joining me for the 2021 State of the School Address. The 2020-21 school year was perhaps the most unique school year in the history of WC. And I think Psalm 92 teaches us an appropriate response to this school year. And Psalm 92 says, "It is good to give thanks to the Lord, to declare your steadfast love in the morning and your faithfulness by night. For you, O Lord, have made me glad by your work. At the works of your hands, I sing for joy." Of course, any shortcomings that we've had during the school year come exclusively from us, but we know that it is only because of God's work in the life of our school, particularly in the life of our teachers, staff, students, families, that we've been able to enjoy any success or any growth, any development in the life of the school, and more importantly, in the lives of our students. The successes that we've had, the challenges that we've overcome, and the new ground that we've covered is owed exclusively to God's sovereign work in the life of our school. And for that, we can be grateful. Just to give you a bit of an overview on the school year, we currently have 900 students in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. We started the school year with 16 fewer students than we now have, so we are really encouraged. It is unusual for the school population to grow over the course of the year, let alone by a number as large as 16 students. So we're encouraged by that. We also know that we have 40 or more students who opted out at the beginning of the school year due to health concerns over COVID, that we are looking forward to welcoming back as soon as those students and their families feel it's right to come back. Each of them had expressed a desire to come back, and so we want to extend that welcome back to those students as soon as they feel comfortable and ready to return. So all that to say is, we believe the school is really positioned for some growth. Our new facilities give us the capacity for about 200 additional students over what we have now. And our plan is to phase that in over the course of several years. We're certainly not going to grow by 200 students in 1 year. Even if we could, we wouldn't want to grow that quickly. But we expect that capacity for growth. And in addition to the new students that would cause that growth to happen, re-enrollment for next year is really strong. We have had 94% of our school families re-enroll for next year. That is pretty much in keeping with what we have traditionally had for re-enrollment, with some time left for families still to do that. When you look at school growth experts, they will tell you that anything over 90% is considered excellent. And when I am able to speak with other schools about our re-enrollment rate, when administrators have discussions over those types of things, I can tell you that WC historically has one of the strongest re-enrollment rates that I've ever come across with schools, and we're certainly looking forward to continuing that process for next year. So this year was marked by a lot of different things, but of course the most obvious one was the COVID crisis and all that went along with it, both in the larger community, but in particular how it affected our operations and functions as a school. First of all, the thing that we're most thankful for is that nobody in our immediate community has endured any life-threatening or long-term ramifications, at least that we're aware of. And so we're obviously thankful that God has protected our community and kept our student bodies, our staff, and our families safe over the last year. And it looks as though we are finally rounding the corner and heading toward a return to some sort of normal practices, at least in some regard. We're close to it by the start of next school year. So thank you to those who have stuck with us over the course of the school year. If you remember last summer when I addressed the school community, I spoke about our belief in the importance of giving our students an in-person school experience on campus full-time. And it was because of that belief that we were strongly committed to, we opted not to do either online or hybrid options. And you'll recall we also opted not to do in-person with the option for families who wanted to do full-time online, because we really felt that the demands that giving that online option to students would give our teachers an overload, and our in-person instruction would suffer because of it. And when you look at national reports and even get anecdotal evidence from schools in the area who have offered those options, I think we've made the right decision. Our students, I believe, have been given the best possible learning experience that they could have over the course of this year. And it's really, we have a number of people to thank for that. And I want to extend this to those people. Our teachers, our nursing staff, our administrators, and all of our support and auxiliary staff have done really heroic work this year in the middle of what was probably the greatest public health crisis of our generation. Each of those people faced a ton of uncertainty and obstacles coming into the school year, and that made a difficult job even tougher. Many of our classroom practices had to be completely rethought and redesigned, and that is no small task when you speak of the work that classroom teachers do. Our three nurses, Lisa Cunningham, Karen Lawrence, and Leandra Doyle, in addition to instituting all of the health protocols that we had to put into place, were also given the responsibility of contact tracing every school COVID case. And this resulted in a massive amount of work for them. And that often took up entire weekends of contact tracing, making calls to families who frankly didn't want to hear the news that was being delivered to them. But all that work was done all day Saturday, much of Sunday, all day Sunday, so that we could reopen school on Monday to our remaining school body. Our facilities team, Eldon Deskins, Jack Gross, and Phil Gow, put in a huge number of hours to get our buildings ready for the new safety protocols. Our staff not only had to develop new practices for just about every activity, but they also had to teach them to our students. It was no easy work, but we did it together, and we did it because we knew that our students would be better off for it. And when we look back, we can certainly say that all the work we put into it was worth it for the experience that we were able to give our students this year. Things were a little bit different at times, and we had to do things we wish we didn't have to do. But we still provided art, music, PE lessons and classes at the lower school, recess, lunch, library visits, literacy instruction, math, science instruction, and a whole lot of reading took place with our lower school students in person with their teacher to guide them. At the upper school, our students still participated in theater productions, concerts, athletic events. You may have read about the new entrepreneurial class that we launched this year called Small Business Management that started a student-led coffee shop that's been operating for the last several months. We offered college-level coursework both through Advanced Placement and College Credit Plus. Several of our science students participated in a joint research project with Ohio State University to produce more bacteria-resistant crops, and a host of other things that I couldn't possibly go into discussing in such a short video with you folks. We were able to manage our COVID cases, and our community remains healthy because of it. For the last 5 or 6 weeks, we have had very few cases of COVID in the school and very few quarantines, especially compared to what we experienced over the winter months. Our numbers continue to be very low. You may have seen that in the weekly health reports that our nursing staff sends out to you. And again, we are very thankful to God for allowing that to happen and keeping our community safe. A second thing that marked this year, of course, was the completion and renovation of our new facilities and campus relocations. This was the largest infrastructure project in the history of Worthington Christian. And by now, most of you are familiar with all the benefits that we gained from this. And really, our only disappointment is that COVID restrictions prevented us from hosting a community celebration with all of you, where we could kind of formally dedicate and celebrate the grand opening of our campuses. And we were able to do that virtually. But let me just share one story from this grand reopening, grand opening with you. A couple weeks ago, I was able to give a tour to a couple who was our major contributor to this campaign. And I wish you all could meet this couple. And at some point that may be possible that you'll be able to learn a little bit more about them. They're a couple in their 80s who've never had children of their own. And so in some ways, they kind of view the WC students as part of their extended family. And they were finally able to come in. They felt comfortable enough with the COVID protocol that they could come in for a tour of the new upper school. And as I walked them around and I was able to show them all the new facilities, I could tell that they had such a great love for the school. I ended the tour, and at the very end, we had 2 of our students come and present them with a bouquet of flowers as thanks for the students. And each of those students were able to share with them what the new building has meant to them and to their schooling this year. And as those 2 students shared those stories about how what the new building has meant to them and to their classmates, I could see the tears welling up in the eyes of this couple as they were moved by that. And it reminded me of the fact that God uses the generosity of so many people to accomplish His work. And looking back this year, it was this couple who were able to give financially, but it was other people who were able to give time, prayer, resources, courage, risk-taking, that really allows WC to be the place that it is. And so that was a real highlight of the year for me. Of course, let me talk a little bit now about school finances. Just 8 years ago, in 2013, that was my first year as head of school, the school budget experienced a $160,000 annual deficit, while also continuing an over 25-year practice of borrowing from the following year's revenue to finish paying the current year's expenses. At the same time, WC had no cash reserves, despite the fact that our accrediting agency recommended a minimum of 5% of the annual budget be held in cash reserves. So that would equate to about $450,000 in cash reserves for this year. And as I said, at the time in 2013, the school had none. So Randy Steckel, our finance director, and I realized that this was not a sustainable practice 8 years ago, and we committed to doing something about it. We knew that it was not going to be an easy fix and that it was going to take time to completely fix that. But I'm pleased to report today that WC is probably in the best financial position that the school's ever been in. We expect to end this fiscal year in the black for the 7th consecutive year. We no longer borrow from the following school year's revenues in order to pay for current year's expenses. And the school now has over $1 million in cash reserves and endowment funds that benefit the school that hold almost $1.5 million in assets. Our auditing firm, GBQ, recently issued a clean, unmodified opinion on our most recent year's financial reports that ended on June 30th, 2020. The results for this past year were particularly good in that no deficiencies or material weaknesses were identified. And of course, as always, if you are interested in seeing the audit report or any of the school financial statements, you can do so by simply contacting Finance Director Randy Steckel at his email address, randy.steckel@worthingtonchristian.com, and he will make arrangements for you to do that. Now, since my last State of the School address, we've had a number of longtime faculty members retire or will soon be retiring. These valued members have served at least 2 decades or more at our school, and I'd like to recognize publicly each of them today. Science teacher Ruth Beshta, who served for years as 6th and 7th grade science and social studies teacher. Librarian Marty Alt, art teacher Beth Heisey, and math and Bible teacher Patricia Boyd. These servants of WC have put in years and years worth of their life in a WC, and they have all left their mark in a deep way, in their own unique way. This year, we also had to face the reality that our longtime upper school English teacher, Al Eiton, was called home to be with the Lord in the middle of the school year. And if you've been able to read any of the student testimonies on our social media page about the deep impact that Al had on the lives of your students, you'll know what a loss to our school that was. At the end of this year, Dr. Buzz is going to be retiring at the end of 38 years. And he has left a deep impact in many ways, both as a teacher and as an administrator at the upper school. And of course, in June, my time at WC will be coming to a close as well. So while there's going to be some transition in leadership, I want to give you every confidence in the future of Worthington Christian School. Our school board is comprised of 8 fantastic people who care deeply about the future of our school. They have installed Tim Kranak as the interim upper school principal, and they've installed Jim Parrish as the interim head of school. And they've done this strategically as they've partnered with the executive search firm, Carter Baldwin, to engage in the search for the new head of school. And I can tell you that process has already begun. Just this week will be some intensive meetings with their team, with our board, with our administration and faculty, as they begin to put a profile together for what they will use to recruit the best possible candidates for the head of school position. I can tell you Carter Baldwin is a top-notch firm. They are known across the country and throughout the world and have placed executives in some of the top Christian schools and organizations in the country. And I know that with the board, they will do the same thing with WC, with the plan to have that person installed as early as the 2022-23 school year. Finally, of course, there are going to be some challenges ahead. And to name just a few of them, the legal landscape for Christian schools appears to be growing rockier. Religious freedom and the right for Christian organizations like WC to faithfully uphold biblical principles in their practices is going to be challenged. There is no doubt about that. Those challenges are going to come. It will be important for the school to maintain a persistence in holding to those things which Christians throughout history have held. Some of those are going to be obvious to us, and the most obvious ones are commitments to life, commitments to marriage, sexuality, and so forth. WC is well positioned for this. If you have not seen our statement on marriage and human sexuality, I encourage you to go to our website. And at the bottom of the website, if you click on the positions link, you'll be able to read what WC's commitment to biblical principles on that. But we're starting to see legal challenges in those areas that could impact things, important things, in our practices, particularly in regards to hiring and employment. So that will be one area that we just need to make sure that we keep in prayer and continued obedience in. The cultural landscape's fraught with peril as well. We all know this. As recent polls in the news show, the percentage of Americans who now identify as Christians continues to shrink, and we are now in the minority of people who profess to be Christian believers, which makes our work as a Christian school all the more important. We have the ability to work against that, and I encourage WC to do so not simply as a reactive bastion against cultural tides, but as a proactive force for good in the lives of our students, our church, and our community. We have to be willing to work through some of the difficult issues and recognize that a biblical worldview transcends any political narratives from any position on the political spectrum. This is going to require humility and even courage, but it has to be done. God will be honored, and our school, our students, the church, and society will be better off for our willingness to apply the gospel to the great issues of the day. This is my 8th and final State of the School address. I want to thank each of you for making my 27 years here the greatest privilege of my professional life, and one from which I gained far more than I could have ever hoped to have contributed. So many memories are going to be filling my mind over the next 2 months, and each of them brings back a smile. I think all the way back to my first class of second graders back in 1994, and the relationships that I've built over those 27 years with students, with parents, with friends at the school, faculty. I love this place, and I love its people. And I believe its best days are still ahead of it. And I look forward to watching that happen. So thanks for joining me tonight, and I hope to see each of you soon.